Hi, Søren here again from Burning Bridges. And as you know, this is a channel about all things Flames of War. And last time we had lists visiting and telling us how to play your German lists as hard as competitive as possible. And today you're going to tell us something else, Vince. So what do you have for us today?
So today we're going to look at a list, well, two lists actually that are built for the new player. Maybe you've played a little bit, or maybe you're looking at getting into tournaments, or maybe you want to learn how to play the game. But these are very basic lists designed to help somebody learn how to play and learn the basics, which then lead to the more advanced tricks of the game.
Yeah. So you're not going to focus on bringing six formation with different HQs and only doing infantry. You've built some lists that contains different units, right?
Yes, yes. So I built a German list and an American list. They're focused on taking one formation and building something that's easy to play, but has the ability to expand into something that can turn into a tournament list. It has all the basic components that you need for a solid Flames of War list. In both of the lists, they're slightly different because each list has different tools. But the main idea is for the list to be functional, uh, capable of handling diverse situations on the table, and something that can be expanded into oh any of the collections that we end up having where okay, I want to play this, I have all my Americans on 14 shelves.
Okay. So which list do you want to start with?
Okay, let's take a look at the American list first. So it comes from the I made a slight adjustment with this one. I took a D-Day formation with a bulge with the bulge support just
Yeah.
because HVAP is kind of critical in late war to keep the American long range anti tank
Yeah.
going.
And
From there, go ahead.
for our new players, HWAP, what does the HWAP card do?
So it's 1 point for every two tanks that have a 76 millimeter gun, and it gives you +1 anti tank.
Yeah.
That lets you deal with the heavier tanks that you're going to run into, notably German and Russian tanks. It takes the Sherman 76 or the 3-inch from AT-12 to AT-13, which really helps against front armor 9 and front armor 8.
Yeah. Goes up to all of a sudden having a 50% chance of penetrating, right?
Yes, sir. Or
Yeah.
a 33% chance at long range, which
Yeah.
is better than a match on twos.
Yeah.
So I started with an armored rifle company. I find that mechanized infantry with the extra bazookas and the half tracks with their machine guns is a little more resilient, and it also gives you the ability to move the infantry if you finish setting up and your opponent takes their first turn and you say, "Uh-oh, I am not where I need to be." Uh, I start with 3 platoons of infantry. That way, if you need to put one in reserves, you can. Otherwise, you can put two on one objective, one on the other. The reason why I went with the veteran armored rifles from D-Day as opposed to the battle weary rifles from the Bulge book is that they're more forgiving and they're more reliable for a newer player. It's not you don't need a command card to make them harder to hit or harder to break. They come in hit careful and having a decent morale stat, so you can take some losses and still be able to play with them. I put the armored mortars in there because it's always useful to have artillery and a smoke bombardment. And then for the support section, we have three priests, a Greyhound reconnaissance patrol, four veteran Shermans with one jumbo 76 and three 76s, all with HVAP, the hyper velocity AP, and then four M5 Stewarts. The
Yeah.
idea with reserves with this list is basically the Shermans plus something. If you want the Shermans plus the veteran armored rifles, or the Shermans and the Stewarts plus mortars or plus reconnaissance, depending on if you have spearhead in the mission or not. It's a solid base, and then you can begin to start understanding This is what I want in reserves for this mission. This is what I want in reserves for that mission. This is what works. With all the bazookas you have around, you can afford to have the Shermans off the table for a little while. And this is a list you can maneuver with. This is a list you can attack with. This is a list you can defend with. It'll do anything well. It's not going to be great at any one stance, but it's very versatile and reliable.
Yes, and again, it's a very interesting point where, as you said in the advanced list building video, that you always keep your reserves flexible. You're not keeping a 40 point Sherman units, and no matter what happens or your opponent brings, you'll have this unit in reserve. You're always going to take a look at your opponent and then see, today I'm going to use this. This will be my most important unit in this game. And then you can build around that. As you said, have 2 platoons of infantry or 3 platoons. Is there any particular reason why you go with the short platoons of armored rifles instead of full platoons?
It let me fit a third platoon at 100 points. 100 points is a pretty standard point level for friendly games, tournaments. It's a good starting place. And having a third platoon as opposed to 2 big platoons means that I can be more versatile with it, or whoever's playing it can be more versatile with it. It lets you fit in that recon element. It lets you fit in the second artillery battery. All those little tools where they're nice to have and they're nice to be able to build off of.
Yeah. In your Sherman list, you've put in a jumbo and made it a 76, the same as the other 3. How will you go around using the jumbo? Is it just the main force? Will you poke that out and just have one tank sniping, or what's the idea in having a jumbo in your list?
The jumbo is there for a couple things. It's there for assaulting infantry that doesn't have very good anti-tank. Like in late war, a British infantry platoon has 1, maybe 2 Piats. Side armor 8's a pretty good bet against 1 Piat, and once the Piat's dead, they can't do much to the jumbo.
Yeah.
It's there to. They're all veterans, so they're hit on 4s. It's there to take the hits because the probability of taking more than 1 or 2 hits at long range, especially if you have cover, is low. So if I get 1 hit from an 88 at long range, I can move it to the jumbo, and I have a really reliable chance of staying alive.
So if I was to take this as a new player, um, even though it can do all 3 stances decently or well, what would you propose I would start with?
As a new
Where's
player,
my, yeah,
a brand new player, I'd say start defending with it. Figure out how reserves work. Figure out how to use smoke to protect what you have. Figure out how to use your artillery to stop their artillery from hurting you. Um, you don't have to worry about the Shermans and the Stuarts showing up right away because you have 3 units with lots of bazookas. But when they do come in, they're nice because they move fast. They can get side shots. They can tear up half tracks. They're very versatile. Once you've
yeah,
figured out defend, I'd say go to maneuver. After you, because then you can attack defend players. You have the artillery. You have the scout to force them out of position. They have to move to objectives and attack or maneuver to versus defend a lot of the time. And you're faster. You have the half tracks with the machine guns. You have the Stuarts. You have the Shermans, but you're still defending against an attack player. And then in that case, you have the scout and the speed to get to the objectives you need to.
yeah. Sounds good. Should we take a look at the German lists?
Okie dokie. Alrighty. The German list is also built off of armored infantry uh, for most of the same reasons. It gives you mobility. I went with Ardennes Armored Panzer Grenadiers because they're confident veterans, so you have that same resiliency. It has armored mortars and stummels because that gives you some anti-tank, some smoke, and artillery. The support section is where it really differs from the American
Yeah,
beginner list. Um, it has 3-pack 40s, which are a tank hunter anti-tank gun. Then it has a scout section, another artillery battery, some brigade panthers, and an Ardennes SS Panzer Grenadier platoon.
yeah. So again, you use it's the same build. You could say you only have 2 infantry platoons in the formation, but you still have a third infantry unit in your list, and you have a 20 pointish tank formation. You have some heavy artillery, the scouts, and here you have the Pack 40s, the anti-tank guns, which you didn't have in the American list. So where's the small subtle differences in these two lists?
So this one is designed more for attack or defend. It doesn't maneuver as well, um, but it has available choices for ambushes. It has the Pack 40s and it has the Stummels, depending on what you want to put in reserve. The reserves are a little more flexible based on, okay, I'm fighting all tanks. I'll do a platoon of infantry with the Panthers and the mortars. I'm fighting half tracks. I'll do this. The Panthers with a platoon of infantry and the mortars again. I'm fighting
Yeah,
infantry. Okay, the Stummels go in reserve. They're not quite as strong against infantry.
yeah,
Um, but the subtle difference is more how the anti tank is delivered and the fact that the Panthers aren't used in the same manner as the Shermans are. The
yeah,
Shermans are faster and harder to hit, so they're more reliable. They have 2 shots on the move, which means you don't need to position them as well, but their front armor isn't nearly as good. So the Panthers are more, okay, I'm going to figure out where I'm putting them to support, and then I'll move them if I need to. With the Pack 40s as an ambush unit or the Stummels as an ambush unit, depending on what you run into.
yeah. Uh, so one of the special rules for the Germans are they can launch mounted assaults, which the Americans can't. Is that something you consider with these armored panzer grenadiers, or is that
It,
don't start on that in when you're beginning? Just hang on to
uh,
that.
I figure if you're going to learn how to play a game, you need to learn how to use the tools that are available to you. If you're going to play Germans, mounted assault is something that, if you can perfect, is very dangerous and is something people cannot ignore. So, with this list, I definitely consider it. Um, I'd say anybody playing it, look at what you're assaulting and use that to decide whether or not you're going in the half tracks. We
Yes.
go back to those poor British infantry that I'm picking on and say, okay,
Yeah.
there's one Panzerfaust, or sorry, Piat. I'll pin
Pierre.
them, and then I'll fire smoke, or I'll fire smoke, then I'll pin them, and then I'll assault so they hit me on sixes. So they get one
Yes.
chance and they can't stop me. If you
Yeah.
look at that American armored infantry list, you say, nope, I'm getting out of the half tracks. 4
Yes.
bazookas are too many.
Yeah. The Germans also have shooting, shooting, no, stormtrooper special rule.
Yes, sir.
Is that something we want to use here? Uh, is that something that you should focus on using on your brigade panthers to move them instead of moving them? Then just keep on trying to blitz and shoot and scoot if you need to reposition.
I don't think so. I'd rather, especially with the poor skill rating and the poor
Yeah,
morale, it's easier to just say, okay, I'm going to spend one turn moving, or I'll fire one shot on the move
yeah,
instead of risking failing a 4 or 5 up roll and being at +1 to hit with one shot.
yeah,
Shooting stormtroopers is something I like more with fearless veteran units or fearless aggressive units.
yeah,
Anything with a 3. Once you get into 4s, you're on a 50-50, and the math tells you it's probably not going to work.
yeah, yeah. So these are two decent lists for beginners. Have you had a look at the? Do they come out of an army box? Can you get an army deal where you get most of these units, or what are we gonna? How are we gonna go
Uh,
about buying these?
so I looked for things that have box sets that aren't horribly hard to find.
Yeah,
Um, they're not any of the out of print box sets. They come in plastic. They're relatively easy to find.
yeah.
You don't have to go looking for old greatcoat Fallschirmjägers to build the box set.
No, you can get this off the shelf in any wargaming shop that sells Frames of War. This is
Or
just
they're
box
pretty
standard.
much always available on the website, or
Yeah,
they're easily located and they're generally in stock because they're frequently used by a lot of players. They're not an edge case
yeah,
that you have to go looking for.
no, and I would say both of these lists is something that you can use again and again. It's not going to go out of fashion. You can always run German Panzergrenadiers and always armored rifles. They're just always a good option.
Oh yeah, they're great options that they played well in version 3. They play well in version 4. I don't see them not playing well in another version. But they're also templates you can build off of because you're always going to want infantry of some sort. And you can say, okay, my 3 Panthers, which I didn't pay that much for, go on the shelf, and I bring out Panzer IVs, which
Yeah.
nobody would do, but still.
Yes, but if you have a weak spot for the Panzer IV, you could bring it, and it won't break the list because you take the Panzer IVs.
No, it won't. It's a template you can add or subtract from, and it'll
Yeah,
still be a viable list.
yeah. Very good, Vincent. Uh, Thanks again for coming and having a look at the beginners list for the Germans and Americans. I hope to see you soon to have another list talk or something else we can figure out. Thank you for
Sounds
coming.
great. Thank you for having me.